This
finding out in the
conference
field.
will now be recorded.
From what we found in the field, and we were able to come up with some estimates on what we were going to do as capital improvements. Let me just give you a couple examples. There is some pipe lining that we'll redo, and that will seal some of the pipe deficiencies throughout the older pipes that have joint leaks, roots that come through, things like that. That allows this infiltration or inflow into your pipes, increases your flow, and causes our sewers to back up. So imagine high groundwater, heavy rains. We were having problems during those types of years, and fortunately the rain has been down. We've been able to control those issues as of late. So there's some pipelining we're going to do. It's significant. It's going to be a couple miles. We've done some already recently, so we have some good pricing. There's manhole sealing. We went out and did some investigative work. Open up the manholes, you look down, you can see where there's groundwater coming in from the pipe penetrations. Good indication that you need to do some work in those areas. There's some pipe disconnects. There are people that have tied into our sanitary sewer that have basically taken their roof water or their parking lot water and tied it directly into our sanitary sewer. We know that because we have meters on these pipes, and as soon as the rain started, we saw a peak in the flow immediately. It's an indication of a direct connection. So we're going to track those down too and make those disconnects. And then finally, there are some places where the pipe is probably going to need to be replaced. Part of the next phase approved by the DEP will allow us to do cleaning and camera work. That will identify some of the deficiencies in the pipes themselves where maybe we have to do some replacement. So that $1.5 million is basically those capital improvements for this first phase. So far with the study we've done, the I&I study that we've done, we have gotten some good results. We have focused in the Stony Brook sewer shed area. That is almost 2/3 of our sewer shed. It's basically the Mansfield, Brookfield, Mechanic Street, Goodwives River areas, Leroy area, Stony Brook, Crenshaw Road, all that area itself. Imagine that area coming all to one spot. That is considered the Stony Brook sewer shed. That's what we're focusing on right now. So I think that kind of gives you an idea where we're looking for the money. I did include the entire design cost because, like everything else in life, there's nothing guaranteed. Though the government says the money's there, they could quickly take it, turn it around, and the governor can use it for something else. Unfortunately, he does have control over it. And there's no sure thing in life. I wanted to make sure that we covered our cost, at least for this first phase. I'm going to be coming back in a couple of years to do this again for another bond authorization until we've gotten our sewer system to be as tight as I can possibly make it. Understand, any drop of storm water that goes into our sanitary sewer system, we are charged by the city of Stamford to treat it. It's water that does not need to be treated. So we're going to be focused on this for quite a while. And I hope you folks do approve it tonight so I can continue to move forward. That's, Monica, that's all I have right now.
Okay,
I'll answer any questions you folks have.
Any questions from F&B? Okay, any questions from Public Works? Frank?
Yeah, hi Ed, how you doing? Thanks so much for your presentation. Just to get a scale of the problem, Ed, if this is a 10-year project and we're looking at $2.5 million for this first phase, and I just make a random extrapolation and say this is probably going to be a $7 to $10 million project ballpark, maybe more. What is the scale of the cost of the I&I problem? Like, how much if we have 1 extra gallon of water that goes to Stamford that doesn't need to be treated, how much does that cost us? And if we estimate, if 10%, 20%, 30% of our actual flows to Stamford are not necessarily treated, I'm trying to get a scale of the cost that we think we're bleeding out.
Okay. Let me give you some numbers I do have. I don't think I can give you a per gallon cost, Frank, but let me see if I can help you with this. Understand what our magnitude of our problem is. First of all, we did an analysis on our water usage in the town of Darien for the folks that have sewers. We were somewhere in the range of about 450 million gallons of water used by our residents that go down our sanitary sewer. Understand, the total flow that we sent to the city of Stamford was almost 880 million gallons. So there's 330 million gallons of stormwater that we're sending over there right now to them. I think that speaks volumes as far as what our problem is.
Yeah, so that's pretty staggering. So if we reduce our flow by, a third, would our cost go down by a third, or would our cost go down by less than a third? I'm assuming less.
Well, it's probably a little bit less. There are certain other factors that in play. Understand that our contract with the city of Stamford, it has a floor of 12% of the city of Stamford cost that we pay. Currently, right now, we're at about 15.75. So we can shave off about 3.75 worth of cost to get us down to 12, but we can't go down any lower than that. So we can reduce the amount that we pay, but we can't pay anything less than 12% per contract for the next 4 years. By that time, I hope to be down around. I'm sorry. By that time, I hope to be down around 12. At which time, when we renegotiate our contract in 5 years, I'm asking to take it down to 10.
And as long as we're over 12, it's pro rata based on relative flows, right? So whatever our share of the inflow is our share of the cost until we get down to 12.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm not smart enough to understand what you just said, Ed. How much money does that represent?
Well,
I mean,
we're
giving them some amount of money each year, right?
We do. Right now, the payments we made last year, it's kind of, if I tell you it's a little bit backwards, we pay in the arrears, if you will. So we get an invoice every year in November telling us what we think the anticipated cost will be for the remainder of the fiscal year till July 1st. But we base that on what our previous payments were the previous fiscal year, and if there was a shortfall or if there was an overpayment. So we kind of true the books up in October, November, and then they give us a number of what their budget is, what their anticipated bonding costs for their capital projects are associated with our contract, and then we set a payment. I adjust my payment based on that. So this year I think I have a number of $2.7 million, but understand last year I paid $3.3 million because we've added some new crossings and the flows were increased. This year I'm looking to see that that's going to be reduced. There's some nitrogen credits that we're getting and so on. So I make an adjustment in the amounts of our monthly payments to the city of Stamford. So if you want to put a number on this, if you want to try to kind of grab onto something right now, at 15.75, we were paying $3.3 million. Okay, so if everything stays stagnant, city of Stamford doesn't pay their employees anymore, they don't do any more capital work, those two numbers you can correlate, you can prorate it, and down to 12, you can reduce, what's that, 20%?
It's about 20%.
Yeah. So take 20% of that.
3.3 is 660,000.
So you're down by $2.7 million right now. Kind of back to what I'm paying right now. So, and that number may change. So I'm going to get an invoice from them now, and that number probably will come back and say that they're spending more money. So that 2.7 that I have budgeted in payments monthly, just divided by 12, I'm probably going to have to bump that up a little bit come December until July to try to get as close to zero as I possibly can get.
Ed, if I might interrupt this, Jack. Since this is sewer and it's not paid through taxes, if we do this reduction, then if everybody's usage was the same as it was in the prior year, those who are connected to the sewer line would see, in theory, a reduction in their assessment.
I think you may be looking for a reduction in their sewer user fee,
Right.
or a hold on the increases. We've been. I'll tell you, my first 4 years here, we never increased the sewer rate at all. The last 3 years, though, we've had to get caught up with some changes that we've made, some contract changes that came into play, and now with capital improvements that we're going to have to make, you know, we're trying to be cognizant of our fund reserve, as well as, you know, not to put all of the onus on taking the sewer fee and making it the sole source to pay for these capital improvements.
Right, but I also want to stress again that this capital improvement and each of the phases will be either taken out of the existing sewer fund reserves or will be paid by those that are connected to the sewer line and not by our taxpayers.
That is correct. Everything will come out of the sewer fund.
Right.
Ed, I have a question. It's Monica. Can you just go over the consultant a little bit? So the fee is the 600 and whatever. And I'm assuming that's being paid in installments. And is this consultant going to be working with you throughout phase one, which is 2 years or so?
Yeah, the $689,000 price tag for design actually includes the entire phase from start to finish, if you will, where they do the initial. They did the application to the DEEP for the Clean Water Fund. They did the initial groundwater monitoring wells, the rain gauges that we set aside, did the late night testing of all the pipes. Now we're into writing the report of what we found. Once they do that, there's other phases where part of phase one, there's other portions where you go out and you do smoke tests or, you know, fog tests, if you will, in the pipes. You do camera, you do cleaning, you do further investigative work of the manholes. That's included in the $690,000. Also included in there is, when they're done, giving us recommendations and helping us put together bid packages to hire people to come and do the capital improvements. That was part of the arrangement also.
Okay, and so for the next phase, when that comes about, are they also going to help us with any other grant applications?
Whoever we choose to do it, and there's no one says that we need to stay with this consultant if we're not happy with them or we want to go a different direction. But as of right now, I think they've performed above and beyond my expectations. They are a great group of engineers that I've been able to work with. So yeah, the next phase comes up after we at least start to do the capital improvements. We will start the second phase. It'll overlap so that I can start putting together what to do next. I don't want to wait, finish, and then start again. I want to continue this. I want to roll into a second phase because I know there's a need. It's not like I'm not sure. I know there's a need for it. And these first two phases, if you will, is the low-hanging fruit. It's the stuff where we know there's a problem. After that, it may be a little bit more difficult to find the locations of where our problems are and identify exact piping sections, manhole sections that need renovation.
Okay, and your focus for phase one is Stony Brook?
It is. It is the biggest sewer section for the town of Darien. All of the flows for the Stony Brook sewer shed come to the Stony Brook pump station, which is closely located to the town hall. It's about 65% of our sewer area.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any more questions. Anybody else have any questions?
Ed,
I just, for the folks who are watching this and on Channel 79 are fascinated by these discussions. So we are Darien residents. We pay taxes, obviously, but we pay money to the government in two ways. We pay the taxes that we pay that funds the schools and the services and all that. And then we also pay the sewer taxes. And if we partook in the investment in being hooked up to the sewer lines, we have to pay for those over time. So this is not a tax in the sense of services that are general in nature. This is because we receive services that are related to our efforts to be living clean lives. I mean, I used to have a septic tank, and then I was asked to put in the sewer line, which I did, and I'm paying now for the sewer line, and I'm paying for the septic tax, the service fee that's associated with that. Is that what this comes all down to right now? Probably a question for Ed.
Bert, I'm going to help Ed out in here. The answer is yes.
So when we issue, and we're going to get there in a second. So when we issue bonds, they're really backed by the revenue from collecting the money from the people who A, have installed the sewer lines and have not paid for them outright, and B, from this for the service fees they're paying. Is that correct? And if that's so, does that sewer bond have a different rating than other obligations of the town?
That may be the case, but I think we would still find ourselves to be in very favorable ratings.
Okay, so
Okay,
so the answer is it doesn't really matter because we're AAA anyway. I would think the bonds are better credit quality than any of our general obligations or other obligations, but it doesn't really matter. They're all AAA, and I don't think the difference will be very large in where we fund ourselves based on these bonds.
Right. Bert, again, understand, the sewer authority does not have the authority to issue bonds. So the town is issuing bonds in favor of or for use of the sewer authority. No different than on the Board of Ed doesn't have the authority to issue bonds. So the town issues the bonds for, like, let's say Ox Ridge, even though the schools will ultimately manage and benefit, the Board of Ed will ultimately manage and benefit from that new facility.
Okay, thank you, Jack. So the last question is, in your learned paper, very good paper, you said in number 6, that the principal and interest of this project will be paid by the sewer customers. Do they pay a different interest than the interest on the bond? I guess they do, right? My interest on my...
I think that from what I'm hearing, and I will definitely say that I am not Ed Norton, so I don't understand the sewer authority as well as I should. The fact of the matter is that the expenses go into the sewer authority operating account, or in this particular case, the bond account. And then a fee is determined by the sewer authority of what should be charged. And as Ed mentioned, it was kept stable for a number of years, but then had to be increased over the last 3 years to accommodate some other increases in the costs that the sewer authority is paying to the Stanford Water Company, or whatever that one is. So it's not a direct one-to-one correlation, but the fee is determined based upon what the interest, principal, capital costs, and other costs associated with managing the sewer authority. Is that reasonable, Ed?
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely reasonable. Understand that the principal and interest, I will get that number from Jen as part of my operating budget. There's a line item for it. I put that into my operating budget along with all my other operating costs, and I add that all up, and I determine if our revenues based on our rate and water usage will cover the operating costs, and that will determine whether I need to, if at all, increase the rate or I can hold steady.
Sounds good.
And Ed, Frank here, can you just remind us what the aggregate sewer budget is for the year? So we have a sense of the scale.
Okay. Off the top of my head, I think it's $4.3 million right this year.
Okay, and again, I just want to come back to the point Cecil and I were looking at, and I'm just putting the pieces together here slowly. I apologize, but you were saying that this current year is about 3.3 million in cost, and we represent 15.75% of the flows into Stanford. If we could cut that down to 12% based on removing I&I, which seems quite reasonable, then that would be a 24% reduction in our costs. The 24% reduction in our cost from 3.3 million would be about $750,000, so almost $750,000. If our cost baseline, to your point earlier, is actually a little lower, then the amount of our savings would be lower, but it would still be substantially over $500,000 per year. So this is a project that has real cost impact as a component of our overall sewer budget. Again, the difference, if we could solve this, would be $750,000 a year or a little less against a total budget of 4.3 million. You're saying, does that seem to make sense to you at a high level?
At a high level, and if you do a straight line analysis, yes.
Yeah,
you know, like everything else, there's plenty of other things that'll play a factor in that. But if you're looking just at what we're going to send the city of Stanford and what they're going to charge us, yeah, that's a okay way to look at it. It's actually a very optimistic way to look at it, and it's kind of the way I'm looking at it right now, because if I'm going to spend this kind of money, I want those kinds of results.
Yeah, just as a first order analysis, it's a significant reduction in the sewer operating cost.
Well, but Frank, I want to add something into what Ed was alluding to. As you know, the people that work at the water company, the sewer plant in Stanford, do get raises. In addition, there's additional capital projects that will be going on there, some of which Darien will be paying for. So while it may not be necessarily a reduction in the fee, it may be used to offset other costs that will be occurring. That's why Ed says the straight line. It will be used to offset other potential incremental costs over the years. And by doing this, that offset may allow certain fees to stay stable instead of having to incur those on top of the fees that we have now.
Right, Jack, I appreciate that. And again, I'm not saying that everyone should be banking an 18% reduction in their sewer cost, based on what we talked about tonight. There's a whole lot of moving parts. I'd imagine that if for example, if we take out all this water that doesn't need to get treated, that what we do send will need to get treated more, because we're sending a more dilute flow now than we otherwise might. So that will impact the cost as well as all the other contractual issues, as well as the raises. So I'm not trying to lock in an amount. I'm just trying to get a sense of scale. And I think Ed is confirming that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's Mike Heights from F&B. And Ed, I apologize if you've already explained this, but this is a layman. I have a non-financial question. That is, so I understand the object here is reduce, ultimately, hopefully, our costs that we incur from Stanford. And that is accomplished by maybe reducing the amount of the water that doesn't need to be treated, as Frank just said, I believe, and consequently, the water that goes over may be more concentrated for treatment purposes. Okay, I get that. But the water that we don't send to Stanford that doesn't need to be treated, where does that go?
I think the appropriate answer would be where it's supposed to go. It's supposed to go and stay in the rivers. It's supposed to stay in the catch basins and storm drains. It's groundwater that comes up, and if you can imagine, kind of makes its way into our piping systems. If the groundwater is higher than the pipe that's buried, the groundwater will stay in the ground. So in essence, what we've done is we provided a curtain drain in some areas because there's so many leaks into our sanitary sewer clay piping. The piping is old. The joints are pervious. So those things allow that to come in. Making them solid, making them impervious will allow the water to stay where it's supposed to stay, in the ground or in the storm drains. Those illicit connections that we're going to find, we're going to redirect them to where they're supposed to be. So right now we're getting water into our system, one, because we have an older system in some areas, and two, because there have been some illicit connections that were made by some developers.
And that then explains why you need the DEP authorization approval, that the water that doesn't go to Stanford, that gets, if you will, redirected where it's supposed to go, is all meeting their approval. Do I have that right, Ed?
Well, the good part about the DEP, they like to put their hands in just about everything. So what they're doing here, though, is they're giving us money to help our system protect itself from sanitary sewer overflows. That's basically the reason they've gotten that Clean Water Act is decades old. But what they've been able to do is put funding aside for towns like, the town of Darien, Danbury, Mamaroneck, Rye, New York. I mean, all of us local coastal towns that have old sewer systems are allowed to, go out there and stop the overflows from happening. And that's the big key. So yeah, they're involved because any overflows are considered a violation of the Clean Water Act, which they enforce.
Ed, hello.
Thank you, Ed.
Ed, this is Peter Fonos. I have a question. And I apologize. I've been off the air for about 5 minutes after I pulled into my driveway. I was listening on the phone while driving home. What recourse is there, if any, against the people that have hooked into the system that should not be hooked into the system?
That's a really good question. I won't voice my opinion on the record for what I think should happen. I'm going to, of course, bring those issues to the Sewer Commission and take their guidance on what they believe we should do. I'll come with recommendations, of course. We do have a very educated commission right now with a couple engineers on the staff. So I think we may be asking them to support some of the costs to do the disconnects, if that's supported by the Sewer Commission. But I don't know past that what they'll be looking to do as far as punitive.
And would it be fair to say that the people that hooked into the system without authorization had fair notice that they should not be doing that?
You know what? I think everyone in town has had fair notice. I think we've put it out over the last 3 or 4 years with notifications for illicit connections. Understand that I can probably find in a group of 100 people, 75 of them not knowing what a illicit connection is, and 2, can you tell me where your sump pump goes? Can you tell me where your roof drains go? You own a building downtown. Can you tell me where your roof drains go when they're supposed to tighten it? So it could be a lot more than just people not doing the right thing. They may not know it's happening, and
Okay.
I don't want to fault them for that.
No, that's fair. That's fair. We don't want to do anything that's fair, but I'm concerned that there are people that are freeloading off the system, and to the extent that I mean, whatever, I know it's a policy matter, it may not be part of our jurisdiction on finance and budget, but if people are freeloading off the system and they're doing it knowingly, I think they should pay more than their fair share in remediating.
I will, I'll guarantee you that I believe the Sewer Commission is going to look into that as we uncover them in the future on how we're going to handle those folks.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Ed, Frank here. Just because I'm the liaison to the sewer group, I do want to highlight that there are two distinct issues here. My impression, and I appreciate your confirmation here, is that the number of people who are illicitly connected to the sewer system, meaning they are homes that are connected to the sewer, but you don't know about it, I think that is very low. I think you have excellent control over knowing which homes are connected to the sewer. I think the much more salient issue is all the water that's coming from each authorized connection properly being diverted into the sewer when in fact a lot of it should be diverted elsewhere. Is that fair?
That's a fair assessment. I mean, we have quite a few older homes in the town of Darien. We have quite a few buildings that are older, downtown area. There are some pumps and some pits where we're finding connections to the sanitary sewer line with help of the building department. They've been great the last 6 months. And we've gone in there and asked the folks to reconnect them and send them in, and they were unaware that they were actually misconnected, if you will. So as we find those, we're asking to relocate. And that's the process that we have in place right now.
Right, but you knew those structures were connected to the sewer line. Like perhaps they didn't know that their sump pumps were going into the wrong place.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions for Ed, are there? No? Okay. Ed, thank you very much. It was a terrific presentation. I think you covered this particular resolution as well as the general state of the sewer system thoroughly. We appreciate your time. And I guess if anyone has any other questions, you can direct them to Jack or I, and we'll forward them on to Ed. But thank you, Ed. We'll let you go.
Yeah,
And,
Monica, I
Right.
want to add one other thing. I am very happy that Public Works will be explaining all of the details of this, and we only have to do the financials. But thank you, Ed.
No,
Okay.
listen, folks, thank you very much for taking this up tonight, and I appreciate you allowing me to step in and do a little presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, Jack, I'll put it back to you.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do quickly. We already have the motion on the floor. I'd like to take a vote. I'll ask people who are a no to say no. Are there any no's? Hearing none. We have no abstentions from anybody who's participating tonight. Hearing none, I'm assuming that we pass unanimously, 9 in favor and none against. So I can now.
10, Jack.
10 in favor. Thank you. And that's right, because Peter wasn't on before. And and now I'll pass it over to Monica.
Okay, and may I have, we have a motion on the floor already, Jack?
Yep, we started prior to the discussion.
Okay, all right, I thought we were just moving it. Okay, could I have a motion, or could I have any abstentions? Barry?
Yes, I abstain.
Okay, and do I have any no's? All right, seeing no no's, I'll say that we have 10 members present and we have 10 yeses, so it passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right.
Isn't that 9 yeses and 1 abstention?
I'm sorry, yes, sorry. 9 and 1, sorry about that, thank you.
Okay, we're next going to move on to, I need a motion to move approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Do I have somebody to move that motion? Can you raise your hand? Okay, I see Mark approving it. Do I have a second? I don't have anybody else from our committee.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So Mike seconds. Again, we're not doing abstentions since everybody can vote on this. Do we
Jack,
have?
I just want to, before, just to bring to people's attention, there are two changes that were brought to my attention by Lisa. They're just typos that appeared items number 5 and 6 to remove some extraneous resolution references from a prior draft of minutes. So that's all, just nothing in substance, just typos.
Well, Mike, that might be the first correction we've had in 3 years on any minutes you've taken.
Well, that's Lisa's eagle eyes.
All right, so do we have any no's? Do we have any, and so we're gonna assume that the minutes are passed as corrected. And then, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mark again. Mike, I'm gonna ask you to second that since you're the only other person I can see from the committee.
I'd be happy to do so, yeah.
Thank you. Hearing no no's, we are in favor of adjourning. We want to thank the Public Works Department, and Monica for allowing us to tag along, and Cecil for doing some excellent work in getting us all together. It's hard enough to do one committee, let alone two. So again, Cecil, thank you very much. Monica, thank you. And to everybody else on F&B, we can leave and let Public Works then talk about us behind our back.
Monica, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, Public Works, hang in there. Could I have a motion to approve the September 15th minutes?
So moved.
Who moved it? Cecil?
Patrick? Yeah, Patrick did.
Either way, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Cecil second, okay. And before we adjourn, this will be our last meeting for Public Works. I just wanted to thank everybody. It was a pleasure working with everyone. It was a challenging year. I think we got some work done. Just remember, there's a meeting, RTM meeting on Monday, 8 o'clock, as always. And I want to remind you, the DOT meeting, I sent you information out on the train station project, $34 million project. If you are interested in being on Public Works next year, I'm sure that we will be weighing in on this, or we will be involved in some way. So it's a good time to learn from the ground floor. And last but not least, I hope anyone that's running for their district coming up in the election, I wish you luck. Thank you for staying on RTM. And could I have a motion?
Monica,
Yeah.
I just, maybe I just missed it, but did we approve minutes from a preceding meeting?
We just
And did we
approved.
need
We just approved. I just
We appro-
approved. That's what you voted on. You
9-1.
approved.
Okay,
You
sorry.
got that. You approved the September 15th minutes.
I gotta stop drinking before meetings.
Patrick moved it and you seconded it.
Or drink
Okay.
more.
One
Or drink.
way or the other.
Okay, so anybody else have any comments?
Thanks for your great leadership, Monica.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah,
It's really,
thanks, Monica.
you've made being on this committee a real pleasure. Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure working with all of you. So could I have a motion to adjourn? There we go. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a
Bye.
good night, everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you, Cecil.
Oh, my pleasure.